We're live. Go ahead, Lucia.
Everybody, go to work.
Is that to show the whole tube or no?
It shows that board in you.
This board?
Yeah.
All right. So, rational root theorem is basically, first of all, you have to understand what does roots mean. Then you put your computer away. All right, what is roots?
The stuff on the bottom of the tree.
I'm glad that's on live stream. Okay, so roots is not on the bottom of the tree, not in math at least. Okay, so roots, what is the definition? So sometimes if you see on SAT says, okay, what is the root of this polynomial? What's the roots in this quadratic? No, there's different roots. So yes, you can think about square roots, but they are different. The roots here on this part of the section is going to be for roots. Sometimes people think it's the zeros. Okay, so what are zeros? In terms of graph, what do you think x zeros is?
X in the middle.
X-intercepts. And also sometimes people think it's the solutions. Okay? And so those are three things, 4 things. 1, 2, 3, 4. They all have the same exact meaning, except sometimes roots means a little bit more. Roots means it could be a complex number, could be a 2i or negative 2i, could be 1 plus 2i or 1 minus 2i. On your homework, there's one that says 1 minus 2i and one is 1 plus 2i. So those are the things that you guys have to understand is roots, zeros, x-intercept, and solutions. Usually that means across the board the same way. Now there are times that it's not. For example, sometimes you got complex roots. That doesn't mean the zeros. So those are things that you can understand. So here we're gonna say is rational zero theorem. So I'm gonna erase this part. I'm gonna say rational zero theorem. Rational zero theorem says, well, possible rational zero is equal to factor of the constant term over factor of leading coefficients. So what is constant? Constant is this number at the end.
So is that the number at the end then?
Yeah, so this is a constant. So whatever number comes at n. This also means something of a polynomial. What does that mean? The 8 is what?
Remainder.
The remainder, isn't it?
No.
The y-intercept? No.
Y-intercept.
Oh, I got
Good.
it right.
Y-intercept. So y-intercept of a polynomial usually located here. It's in a polynomial form. Leading coefficient is the 3. So you're gonna take those two things. You're gonna say, okay, so those are possible zeros here. So how many possible zeros are they? So we're gonna say possible 0. That's equal to the factor of the constant. What is constant in this case? 8. 8. Over a factor of 3. And you say, okay, that's easy. So factor of 8. So how many different factors for 8? What's a factor of 8?
4. 4 and
Okay.
2.
4 and 2. 2. 4. What else?
8.
8.
1.
And 1? Good. So it's going to be plus minus, plus minus, plus minus, plus minus. The reason why you have plus minus is that sometimes you got negative 8 times negative 1. Okay, so, and so you're going to have plus minus over plus minus over plus minus over plus minus over plus minus 3, plus minus 1, and a plus minus 3. So with this, it's going to give you probably 8 different combinations. Okay, so I just match up with the bottom. So this one match with this one, this one match with this one, this one match with this one, this one match with this one. What is 1 over 1? 1. Comma. 2 over 1.
2.
4 over 1,
Four.
and then plus minus 8. Okay, so that's the first set. The second one has a different set too, so then I just write it out, plus minus
1/3.
1/3,
Oh, wow.
plus minus
2 over 3.
2 over third, plus minus,
4 over 3.
and then plus minus,
8 over 3.
and that's it. So those are the possible zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 2 is 16. So those are possible 16 zeros. That is in the real zeros. We're not talking about complex numbers. Are we okay here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're gonna give you a question. We're gonna say, hey, can you find out what is the, I'll give you another question. Let's just say f of x is equal to maybe 12x to the third plus 3x minus 6. So I can say, hey, can you find out all the possible roots? Now, anything I repeated, you can take away. You can write it down, but eventually you're gonna say, okay, that's repeated. So we'll be here. Everybody finished or no?
Yeah.
Possible zeros, real zeros, rational zeros. So in this case, it's gonna be plus minus 6, plus minus 3,
2.
plus minus 2, plus minus 1, right?
Uh-huh.
And then plus minus 12, plus minus 6, plus minus 3, plus minus 2, plus minus 1. So then, first one is gonna be 6 over 12, which is 1/2. So plus minus 1/2, right? And then plus minus 1/4, and then plus minus 1/6, and plus minus 1 over 12, right? That's the first combination with the 1 on the bottom. And then
You're missing a 4 on the bottom.
4, plus minus 4, plus minus 3, plus minus 2, plus minus 1. I should pick 12. 12 is too many factors. But that's the one set. 1/2, 1/4, 1/6, 1/12. What's the next one? 6 over 6 is what? 1? 1/2 already repeated.
Yeah.
1/3.
It's not there.
1/3, it should be here.
It isn't.
No.
Oh, the 4, because we forgot 4. Oh, wait, no.
No. 12.
12.
1/4, 1/6. Oh yeah, there's 1/3. So plus minus 1.
Plus minus
So plus minus 1/2 is already there, and plus minus 1/3, and plus minus 1/6 is already there. Are we okay here?
Yeah.
So my finger gonna move to the 4th. So 4 over 5 just gonna be plus minus 3 over 2, and then plus minus 3 over 4,
And there's already plus minus half.
and then plus minus half, and then plus minus 1 over 4, which is already there. Okay, so I hear it's gonna be plus minus 2.
Over 1, 3.
We didn't have there.
Oh,
Plus minus 1 is already there,
What?
right here. And plus minus 2 over 3.
And 1 over 3 is already there.
And 1 over 3 is already there. So the last one here. So the second to last one is going to be plus minus 2. Plus minus 3 over 2 is already there. Plus minus 1 is already there. Plus minus 1 half. 1 half is there too. So now it's going to be the integers. Plus minus 6 and plus minus 3. And then plus minus 2, plus minus 1. So that's all the possible zeros here. Just auto repeat one, it doesn't have to rewrite it. Yes?
When we're arranging the factors, do we have to be about the smallest?
No, but you do need to understand which one's easiest. So if you then all that, I won't give you something as this complicated. This one's I happen to give you a very, very complicated one. But you don't have to write in order, just make sure you have all of them. Just make sure you match each individual
So
one
this is
up.
all we're doing.
No, we're gonna go more. We're gonna talk about the next part we need to learn,
Why
which
do
is,
you ever busy come like that?
yes.
Yeah, I am confused.
Okay, so let's start with the first term. So this, I just take this divided by 12, so it's 1 half. 3 over 12 is 1/4. 2 over 12 is 1/6. 1 over 12 is 1 over 12. And then go to second term. 6 over 6 is 1. 3 over 6 is 1 half, which is what we already have here. Okay? And then 2 over 6 is 1/3, which is we don't have before. 1 over 6 is already half here. So we finish this 2 term. So again, each individual term you touch each individual term on the bottom. But anything repeated, you don't have to go over again. Are we okay here? Chris, Michael, wake up. Okay. Question about this part. Now we're gonna get to the harder part.
Okay.
This is the easy part. Okay, this is the easy part. Now we're gonna go to the harder part. What's the harder part? Okay, so we're gonna give you new questions and ask you to list out all the possible roots, but we're gonna go in and find out. It's gone. It's on a video. It's on a video. But you can try again. Most mainly it's not about what you copy down, it's what you know.
Like you're in the speed right?
Okay, so now we're gonna get to this question. I want you to try again on this one, but we're gonna actually find out all the possible roots here. But we're gonna give you this one. It's a really complicated case, but it's easier than last case actually. So f of x is equal to 15x to the third plus 14x squared minus 3x minus 2. So we're gonna have this question. Eventually we're gonna graph this polynomial. Eventually we're gonna graph this polynomial. But first we need to say what's the possible zero overlay. Because I can set 0 equal to f of x, but I cannot use factor by grouping here because factor by grouping doesn't work here. So, what are the possible zeros?
2.
Write it down first. Factor of what? 2.
2 and 15.
So factor of 15. And just write it down. Plus minus 1, and then plus minus 2, right? And then plus minus 1.
Plus minus 3. Plus minus 5. And plus minus 15.
So, can I list down all of them? Plus minus 1, plus minus 2, right? Right?
Yeah.
And then we're gonna go to the 3, so it'll be plus minus 1 over 3, and then plus minus 2 over 3. This term, and then plus minus 1 over 5, plus minus 2 over 5. and then plus minus 1 over 15, and then plus minus 2 over 15. So that's all the possible zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this is 16. Okay, so 16 zeros. This is the easy part. Now we're gonna get to the hard part. So now you have to pay attention. We can use those 16, but we're gonna pick the easiest target.
One.
Right. You never pick anything this because that's too much work. So I will pick the positive 1 or negative 1. So we're gonna call this the easy target. Rarely I'm gonna ask you to do this. Rarely, it almost never happen. Okay, not at least not on my test goals. I'm not gonna go into that level. Andrea, are you awake?
Yeah, I'm awake.
Yeah, you will have to sleep. Okay, so easy target here. So the easy target is plus minus 1 and plus minus 2. So what you're gonna do is we can actually plug in a value on those things, but we're gonna plug in a value using synthetic division. So instead of looking for F1, right? We're not actually plugging 1 in there. What do? We're gonna use synthetic division 1, like this. Because we know that same thing as a plug-in value. And the whole idea is we're gonna use something called factor theorem. And we want this part to be, so the goal of this remainder is 0. So if it equal to 0, your life is set. Yes.
What about -1? It's plus or minus?
Yeah, we're gonna do -1 too. So if a 1 doesn't work, we're gonna do -1. Right? So at first we're gonna do 1. Chris is already gone.
I'm here.
Chris, come on. Pay attention.
Okay, so we're gonna try 15, right? 15 and 1 is gonna be what? 15, 29, 29 and 1, 26, 26 and 1, 24. Is that 0?
No.
No, so we gotta keep on trying until you get 0. It's not that bad. If you, this one only takes what? Almost like
4 times.
15 seconds.
Whoa.
But if you get 0, your life is set.
Yeah.
So you're gonna try down 15 here. 15 times -1.
Minus 1, 2, 1,
-2 times -1.
2.
Oh, oh my god.
Life is set here.
Livey.
Set. So it's equal to 0. Once they equal to 0, that means something though. Remember, we talked about the factor. If you have, it's called factor theorem. It's called factor theorem. Guys, stop being immature. Okay, the factor theorem says if I plug in here, right, f of a -1, that's equal to 0. That means what? That's a what? That means what? If it equal to 0, that means they cross 0. So that means the graph's going to be something like this. At -1, something's going to happen. It's going to go this way or this way. It's going to go across that 0. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that also means -1, 0 is my x-intercept. So what do you think the factor? If a -1 is equal to 0, what is the factor?
0.
X plus 1.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're right. X plus 1. So x minus 1 is x equal to -1. Okay, x equal to -1, that's my 0. You move the -1 to the other side, That means x plus 1 is a factor. Is a factor. So I write in red, that's very important. X equal to -1. If I move that -1 to the other side, this becomes this, right? X plus 1 is equal to 0. Then x plus 1 is a factor. So x plus 1 is a factor. Look at this. Why do you have to change sign? -1. X plus 1 is a factor. You look at it. If I have 15x to the third plus 14x squared minus 3x minus 2. If I divide it by x plus 1, what's my result?
0.
No, it's not 0. What's my result?
The same.
Your other factor.
Huh?
The same exact.
If I take this divided by this, what's my result?
Your other factor.
What is that?
0.
No, it's not 0.
-1.
15.
15x squared.
Wait, what? What's going on?
If I take this one divided by x plus 1, remember, we changed the sign of plus 1 to -1, right? But I hear, when we say -1 is going to give me a 0, that x equal to -1, now x plus 1 is a factor. If I take this divided by this, it's going to give me this. Michael, wake up. Okay, so what does it also means? This means I can move this to the other side. If this side is divide, what's the other side? Multiply. So can I rewrite this as 15x to the third plus 14x squared minus 3x minus 2 is equal to 15x squared minus x minus 2 times by x plus 1. Does that make sense? If this divided by this is equal to 15x squared minus x minus 2, that means if I times both sides by x plus 1, this becomes the factor here. Now this is something I can factor. Can I use a box to factor this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's do that. So remember, our whole goal is to factor this as much as I can. So it's called linear factorization. So it's a 15x squared minus 2 minus x. No, sorry, this one's minus first, last, middle. So it'll be 5x, 3x, 2 and 1, 5x, 6x. Which one need to be negative?
Let me see. Negative, right?
This one, right?
Yeah.
So that can equal to what? 5x minus 2 times 3x plus 1 times x plus 1. I just rewrite that polynomial into factor form. Why do we do that? Because the factor form is easier to graph. So here we can set this one equal to 0. So x equal to 2 over 5. 3x plus 1 is equal to 0. X equal to what? Negative 1/3. X plus 1 equal to 0. X equal to negative 1. You got it. Also, what's multiplicity? What do you think the multiplicity here?
1.
1? Multiplicity is what?
1.
1.
1.
1. So 3. Okay.
And then can I graph this?
Wow.
Well, let's look at it. What's end behavior on this one? The end behavior, this is x to the third degree, and this is a positive. So what's the most closest one on here? End behavior.
Up,
One.
up, no, wait, down, up.
Down, up.
Down up, because the most closest one is x to the first power, and this is a positive, right? So it looks like something like this, right? So this is down, up. So I can write it.
Oh, it goes to 0.
So this part is down, this part is up. How many go to 0? This is 2 over, this is a negative 1 here, and a negative 1/3, and then 2 over 5th. So this one's going down, and so multiplicity is 1, right? Multiplicity is 1 is going to go through them, it's going to come back. And that's my graph. I can actually graph this whole thing. So let's recap everything. A lot of you guys are kind of confused. First of all, I found out I want to factor this, but I can't. Factor by grouping doesn't work. I probably can try, but it's not going to work. If I factor out x squared, there's nothing be alike can factor out. So factor by grouping is not work. Rational zero, so we can list out that down. Everybody say this part is the easy part. We also going to pick a target. The easy target, the better. Usually do 1 or -1 or 2 or -2. That's the first try. Usually by second try or third try, you should get a number. At the worst, fourth try. On the test, I will never give you a fourth try. Always gonna happen within the first 3 tries. Sometimes you might get lucky. You got it in first try. But your whole idea is to get 0. Once you get 0, that means -1 is a 0. That also means x plus 1 is a factor. So that means I can rewrite this, whatever remainder comes x plus 1. So I don't have to go do this part. This part is to explain to you. This one is equal to this. And I factor more, I'm going to get an answer, and I can factor it. Okay? So for those of you guys who want to try a question like this, I know you say I don't, but I still need you to do well on the test. So it'll be x to the 3rd power plus 2x squared minus 5x minus 6. As simple as this, factor by grouping doesn't work. So find out all the possible 0 here, and try those zeros, and then try to graph it. Find out all the zeros, and then you can try to graph it. Once you get to the certain format, then you can factor it. This is a big part. This is about 25 points on the test. Michael, wake up. Lenny, wake up. Why? Today is one of those
The
days.
military doing
It's Monday, mister, that's why. It's
Oh my
Monday.
God.
Now is the time for you to do problem now. So the question's on the bottom right here. I want you to find all the possible zeros. This is a very easy one. Possible zeros first. And then try some of those zeros. Eventually that's gonna give you a 0 on the remainder. Once you give it 0, your life is set. Then you can say, okay, let's factor the rest. But here that I would know is this is -1. If you want to write down your notes, if you see this -1, I would say it means x plus 1 is a factor. Okay, make sure you write that part. If it's -1, that means x plus 1 is a factor. If it's -2, that means x plus 2 is a factor. If it's a positive 1, that is x minus 1 is a factor. Does one work? It worked? If -1 is a 0, that means factor is what? X plus 1. Good. So those are the things that you need to know. They are always opposite signs. graph it? Check the graph on decimal suits, right? See, I have a test, you need to give me the factor form of it, and then give me graph. Then you should wake up. So Daniel is already done. If you guys have questions, you can ask him. Sai is already done too.
I'm done, just go for him to grab it. You don't know how to grab. Just grab the equation.
Alright.
Say this.
You didn't grab it? You only find the zeros?
We've done zeros and we did grab it. Yes, not in a good way. Mine's the, what's the like? What's the thing? Yeah.
Yep.
Let's see. Yes, you got it right. Yeah, we got it right.
So if you need help, we can ask those four. You got that? You got it right?
Yeah.
Somebody can help.
So you wanna see my work?
Jing, you need to get help?
Oh,
No, I'm still doing it. I'm not.
Okay, let me
give
just.
him like the start.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I'm not paper.
Yeah, I'm gonna get paper because I don't know where's my paper.
So,
So,
I'm
well,
doing graph.
Oh, I was just messing around with that.
okay.
So anytime you have x
This is
equal to
a
3,
common
that's my x
coefficient,
intercept,
but it's 81.
that means x
This is your factor.
minus
Your
3 is a
constant.
factor.
Your constant.
Those are the things that you have to understand.
So we got
It's
five
called
factors
factor
to that.
theorem. X
Yeah.
equal to positive 2
Plus or minus.
is your
Plus or minus.
x intercept, and the x minus 2 is a factor.
This is your factor.
And then move it.
Yeah.
They will ask you, they will say
Yeah,
this
this
linear
is-
factor, so this is called linear factor. I can ask you, what is the linear factor of this?
You have
Then that's the
eight
linear
zeros plus or
factor.
minus, so it's 2 for each.
Okay?
What did you say?
Now, when I ask you the zeros,
like
then
we
you
have
can tell me the
eight
zeros.
total.
When I ask more of the C, you can give me
We had
one.
8 zeros.
When I ask you leading coefficient test, I can ask you.
Yeah. So, you're supposed to use synthetic division.
Yeah, so x equal to -1,
Find no
x
remaining.
plus 1 is a factor, but x plus 1 is right here.
Yeah. But for me,
So that means
I
you just
look
have to
at
factor out the rest,
zero,
which is
two,
rest is given
plug it
here.
in, and I got 0. So, yeah. What I'll do is just do it instead for you. So, yeah, 1 here, 2, then 5, and then 6. You get that one, right? Okay.
How many of you guys want to stay in pre-cal? Raise
All
your
of
hand.
us.
You are, Danny are.
I think I'm gonna stay, because I'd rather fail it than drop it.
No, you're gonna go to events topic.
Yeah, that was.
You can go to events topic. They're gonna decide this class period is switched to events topic.
All of it?
Well, right now they are talking, I'm trying to talk them out. So how many people are for sure they want to do pre-cal?
I want to do break out.
Pre-cal.
I mean, like.
Yeah,
it's-
that's
it's
a-
one,
advanced topics,
two,
like you said,
three.
it switches
Let me
to
have no
the
choice.
class.
Well, you wanna stay in
Oh,
pre-cal?
well. Lisa,
You wanna go to events
Lucy
topic?
here? Okay.
Do I have to talk to
Same multiple this. So
No,
brings down 1.
So I would stay in
You
the
wanna
same
stay in
class,
pre-cal?
advanced topics?
It's got 0.
Switch, okay,
I
yeah.
have a
that's-
question.
Whoa.
So you're basically be dropping pre-calc?
Wait.
But staying
So
in
your
the-
class, your schedule is
You
not
do
gonna
project
show
two.
as
So get 2 here.
a pre-cal anymore, it's gonna show as a
But
events
it's
topic.
gonna
Raise
show
all
as
this.
a dropped class.
Notice it's running.
Yeah, well, it won't show, it just have a schedule.
Oh, so all you gotta do with the
If
class
we're gonna be
side.
on
It's fine, I don't care. It's the end of the day, so like, you know.
You
know how it is.
So raise your hand if you stay on a
Two here,
pre-cal.
4.
So I would be, if I did advanced topics, I would be in the same class as just advanced
Yeah.
topics.
8, because you multiply it right
And
here.
the psi,
Oh.
science gonna be in pre-cal,
Yeah,
right?
you're right.
Yeah.
And Ariana?
I would like to
Get
stay in
6,
pre-calc.
and that becomes 0.
Okay. Okay,
That's
so
equal.
at the end of no left, because it seems like a lot of,
Yeah, one of these eight.
they
remember,
cannot
it's
do
eight
double
zeros.
call, I can't
I mean,
stand,
you can
I
also
don't
plug it in,
understand
but
why.
like, it's
That
probably
means some
gonna
of
take
you
a
guys have
little
to
longer.
change schedule.
Come here, see, it's plus or
One
minus.
of these one into the file.
Yeah, it can be negative or plus or positive.
Actually, if I change my schedule, is there a possible way to get a V lunch?
Yes.
Why you wanna do
Actually.
B-lunch? So you can do homework?
Cause I ate A lunch.
I mean, it'll be
B-lunch, you can at least do homework?
Yeah, you can do homework on lunch.
Okay.
You won't do lunch.
Okay, so you got one
Huh?
factor. You got two. So x equals two.
Yeah.
So you gotta bring it over here.
Here's what I don't
That's
care.
one factor.
Rules are rules.
And you divide this factor by this.
Let me catch you again, boy. Slap you.
Divided by this. No, divide right. Eh. Okay, so, hey, can you help me with this? Like I'm a little tired right now, so if you're helping divide this, then man, I'm an IP, I get free pass, you know? Not that bad, but like, you know.
Where are we?
We're right here, we're dividing this now. Come on. I mean, you did it right.
It's not x minus 2.
No, X plus two. No, wait.
It's x plus 1.
X plus one. You got X plus one?
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
X
there was
plus
one.
one is a factor.
Oh, wait, you got that.
Yeah, I put x plus 1.
Negative one is a zero, plus one is a factor. X plus one. Yeah, always opposite
I gotta
signs.
write
So should it be divided by x minus 2? It should be divided by x.
Oh, wait.
I mean, I still got that. Well. Wait, let's see. Plug in two here.
But yeah, there's
That's
more
equal.
x's that you can use.
Exactly.
besides -1.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Just like not divide that and then you find the other zeros.
I just got confused reading it because it wasn't x minus plus 1.
Look, there's a video on the board. We got this. Oh, we got that. Word. Bye guys. I'll see you later. Until tomorrow, guys. Like the video, right? You know.
Oh yeah, tutoring today, so